Picture this. You wake up and realize that for years, every decision you made felt like your choice. The late-night scrolling, the extra drink, the endless streaming, the casual hookups, the impulsive purchases. But when you look closely, none of it feels free anymore. It feels scripted. The things that once felt like expressions of your individuality now move like invisible chains around your wrists, tugging you toward the next hit of relief, distraction, or stimulation. You tell yourself, I'm just doing what I want. Yet your wants arrive pre-packaged, delivered by algorithms, advertisements, and old wounds masquerading as preferences. The more you obey them, the smaller your life becomes. What if doing what you want has quietly turned into a prison cell with a smiling face? What if the very impulses you defend as freedom are the mechanisms of your captivity? And deeper still, if your desires can be manipulated, conditioned, and wounded into existence, are they truly yours at all? Or are you simply the servant of a master you have never met? Desire, we're told, is sacred. Follow it and you'll be free. Yet hidden beneath this romantic myth is a quieter story of trauma-twisted cravings, algorithm-shaped impulses, and an ego that confuses compulsion for choice. Gabor Mate argues that addiction is not about bad substances, but about wounded brains seeking relief, driven by dopamine circuits wired in the crucible of early pain. What looks like I want this is often I can't bear what I feel without this. Psychologically, the problem runs deeper than chemistry. Jung wrote that whatever remains unconscious in us acts from the shadows with a possessive quality. The less we own our darkness, the more it owns us. Our disowned rage, hunger, loneliness, and shame leak out through compulsive behaviors, using desire as their disguise. Nietzsche's idea of the will to power suggests that life is always reaching to exert and expand itself. But in a culture of spiritual emptiness, that drive collapses into cheap substitutes: status, stimulation, domination, performance. Sartre insisted that we are condemned to be free, yet most people flee that burden into bad faith, telling themselves they have no choice, while endlessly obeying habits that once felt voluntary. Here lies the paradox. The more a society glorifies doing what you want, the more it creates citizens who never examine where their wants come from. The pain-avoiding brain, the shadow's hunger, and the will to power, reduced to consumer choices, all merge into one engine, a self that feels autonomous while being quietly steered. The result is not freedom, but a velvet-lined cage of impulses that feel personal, yet are anything but. You do not notice the bars of this prison because they arrive disguised as tiny pleasures. A quick scroll to take the edge off, a harmless binge because you deserve it. A casual hookup to prove you are still desired. A small line of credit to soothe the ache of emptiness with something new. Neurologically, each of these choices lays another microscopic rail in the brain's reward pathways. Cue, craving, response, relief. Over time, the loop accelerates. The dopamine spike shrinks, the craving grows louder, and what once felt like leisure becomes maintenance. Just enough stimulation to avoid withdrawal from your own unprocessed reality. Cognitively, confirmation bias and rationalization step in to defend the loop. You curate beliefs that justify your behavior. Everyone does this. At least I'm not as bad as. I can stop whenever I want. The shadow Jung spoke of does not only contain your darkest impulses, it also contains your unused potential, the life you might have lived if you were not constantly soothing your wounds. every evening numbed is a quiet decision against a difficult conversation, a creative risk, an honest look in the mirror. At the societal level, these personalized prisons scale into culture. A distracted population is easier to market to, easier to govern, easier to keep from asking dangerous questions about meaning, power, or the structure of suffering. Algorithms learn the contours of your pain and feed you whatever keeps you on the hook 5 minutes longer. Outrage, titillation, envy, novelty, until your nervous system forgets what unmediated silence even feels like. The urgency is not merely moral, but existential. With every unexamined want obeyed, the space in which a different life could emerge grows smaller, until you are no longer a person making choices, but a pattern repeating itself. Rebellion does not begin with saying no to the world. It begins with daring to doubt your own desires. The first radical shift is this. Instead of asking, "How do I get what I want?" you start asking, "Who or what in me is wanting this?" That one question breaks the spell. It forces a distinction between the wounded child seeking anesthesia, the ego craving validation, the shadow thirsting for expression, and the deeper self that longs for truth. Freedom stops being the ability to indulge impulses and becomes the capacity to pause before them. Practically, this rebellion looks surprisingly small and concrete. You sit in front of the screen, feel the familiar itch to escape yourself, and you wait. 30 seconds, then 60, then 2 minutes, long enough to notice the emotion underneath. Boredom, loneliness, anger, shame. Gabor Mate's trauma lens suggests that instead of asking why the addiction, ask why the pain. So the next time you reach for your chosen drug, you turn inward and find the ache it is faithfully serving. In that moment, you are no longer a puppet of dopamine. You are a witness to your own suffering. The loop has been interrupted, but rebellion cannot end at abstinence. Slowly, something new begins to appear in the cleared space where compulsions used to live. Curiosity. You experiment with evenings that are not devoured by numbing, reading something that genuinely stretches you, creating instead of consuming, sitting with a friend in a conversation that is not punctuated by constant glances at a screen. At first, it feels awkward, even boring, because your nervous system has been trained to expect fireworks. Then, almost imperceptibly, another kind of pleasure surfaces. The quiet satisfaction of doing something you actually like, not because it floods you with dopamine, but because it leaves you more whole than it found you. History is full of those who chose this inner revolt. Stoic emperors practicing restraint in a world of absolute power. Monks walking away from privilege, recovering addicts who rebuild their lives around brutal honesty instead of numbing stories. Their common insight is simple and terrifying. To regain sovereignty, something in you must be willing to die. The old identity that was built around chasing relief. Yet, what is born in its place is not a life of sterile self-denial, but of cleaner joys. The joy of alignment, of saying yes to what does not betray you when the moment passes. The more you align actions with what expands your integrity, rather than what soothes your discomfort, the more your nervous system learns a new association. Not pain, escape, but pain, presence, meaningful action. This is the quiet birth of a different kind of desire, one that does not shrink your life, but deepens it. At the deepest level, the problem was never desire itself. It was forgetting what desire is for. When pain, conditioning, and profit-driven systems hijack your wanting, desire becomes a centrifuge, spinning you around the same small orbit of relief, distraction, and self-avoidance. But beneath those acquired cravings lives another current, a longing not to feel less, but to become more real. This is the desire mystics, philosophers, and yogis point toward in different language, the pull toward wholeness, toward becoming someone who can stand in truth without needing to escape. Here the old paradox from the saint's instruction is revealed. Do not do what you want, and then you may do what you like. What you want is the surface impulse, the reflex born of habit, trauma, and manipulation. What you like is the deeper consonance between your actions and your soul. Once you stop reflexively obeying the first, you begin to discover the second. The same world offers different pleasures. A conversation instead of a performance, craft instead of consumption, solitude that nourishes instead of isolation that corrodes. You realize that true liking has a specific texture. It leaves you more alive, more honest, more capable of love. The final realization is as liberating as it is unsettling. Every addictive loop, every compulsive yes, has been a distorted attempt to solve a real problem. Unmet needs, unfelt grief, unlived authenticity. Once you see this, your past no longer looks like a series of moral failures, but like a desperate intelligence trying to keep you alive with the only tools it had. Compassion does not excuse the damage, but it breaks the shame that keeps the prison intact. Shame says, "You are your addiction." Truth answers, "No, you are the one who's been suffering under it, and the one who can choose differently now." From this vantage point, freedom is no longer romantic or glamorous. It is slow, often quiet work, choosing presence over sedation, honesty over performance, responsibility over convenient blame. Yet, as you practice it, something remarkable happens. You do, in fact, begin to do what you like. Not because you finally gained permission to indulge every whim, but because your likes have been purified. They now mirror who you really are, not what your wounds or the market demand. You begin to measure desire not by how intensely it numbs you, but by whether you can look yourself in the eye afterward without flinching, even with a strange kind of gratitude. One day, almost quietly, you notice that the urges still arise, but they no longer command you. There is a gap now, a held breath where you get to decide. In that gap, you discover a form of desire that does not drag you by the throat, but walks beside you like a companion. The desire to live a life you respect, to inhabit your own soul fully, without anesthesia. And so the old slogan cracks. Freedom was never doing whatever you want. Freedom is becoming the kind of being who can bear the weight of reality without needing to run from it, who can feel the pull of 1,000 cheap satisfactions and still choose the one thing that doesn't vanish when the screen goes dark. That is when the paradox completes itself. By refusing to serve your lowest wants, you finally earn the right to do what you truly like. The question that remains, quietly, unforgivably, is this: when the next impulse knocks, which part of you will answer the door?